First thing I'm going to do is to replace this reservoir is I'm going to take the cover off, and then I'm going to siphon out as much of the oil as I can and throw it in an oil basin so that way I don't make a mess. And I'm going to do this until the reservoir is as empty as I can get it. To take the serpentine belt off, we're going to loosen up the pulley bolt right down here, and that's a 15mm wrench. Loosen it up, and then we will take a 15mm socket and loosen up the bolts. And that'll take the tension off the belt, and we can take the belt off. 15mm socket. Take the tensioner right off that belt. Now you can just take the belt right off one of the smooth pulleys. Now we're going to take the power steering pressure line off, and I'm going to disconnect it right here from the pump so that we can lift the pump up. 16mm wrench. Just work it back and forth if it gets a little rust in there. You can always spray it. We'll lift this right up out of the way. Make sure you have a catch basin underneath for any excessive power steering fluid that might drip out. Try to tilt that up out of the way. To remove the electric fan, now I'm going to take the overflow hose off the radiator. Set that aside. 10mm wrench. And the electrical connector is right there, but I'm going to loosen up this bolt first. I'm going to take this one out. Set those aside. Let's grab this connector and disconnect it. So you're going to push down on that tab on the bottom here. And then pull. Now with the two mounting bolts on the top off, the electrical connector disconnected, we just got to slide it up because it's two ears that line it up on the bottom. There it is. So we have one ear here and should be one there. It's broken. 13mm socket. Now we can use the cutout holes in the pulley and break these free. There's 3 of them. One there, one here. And the one on the bottom looks like it is kind of corroded. So I'm going to give it a shot with a regular socket. Let's see. I got it. So then you can just slide that bolt right out through that hole in that pulley. And do the same to all 3. There you go. Now all 3 mounting bolts are out. You can see the pump comes right out. And now we have the return hose right there. But I'm going to use a rubber hose pincher to stop the fluid from running out and make a mess. So I'm going to grab that. Pinch that off. And then I'm going to get a pair of pliers and lower this clamp. With my pliers, I'm just going to lightly squeeze and twist the rubber hose. I don't want to make a hole in it. Once I've twisted it and broke it free, I'm just going to pull it right off. And pull the pump out. To take the reservoir off of the pump, you need a flathead screwdriver or a chisel. You're going to pull up on this tab, just like that. So you might need 2 of them, make it a little easier on yourself. So I'm going to take 2 screwdrivers and a hammer. I'm going to pry this tab up, line this screwdriver there, try to hold it with one hand. I'm going to give this a tap. There we go. Look at that. So now I've got the tab lifted over. It's on the metal. I'm going to going to flip it around, do the same thing to the other side. It's plugged in right there. So their new reservoir is going to be replaced, so if it cracks, it's not a big deal, but just pry it off. Like that. So the reservoir comes with this little bag. It's got 2 brand new clips in it, which is nice, and a new O-ring. The O-ring is right here. We're going to take the old O-ring out, set it aside. So now I'm going to put the new O-ring right on the reservoir, and I'm going to line it up and press firmly until it seats. And there we go. Now I can take one of the new clips. I'm going to start both of them before I actually hammer them both down. So a good way to line this up is you've got this rounded and the sharp edge. Sharp edge will go right on the metal part, and the rounded part will slide right into this plastic. So that way you can't mess that up. Just going to start the other one. Same thing, rounded edges on the plastic side. And then you want to make sure that you hammer them down so that that metal is on the other side. The tab is locked on the other side. Now that's seated and good to go. Now we're going to hook up the return hose to the new power steering reservoir. I'm going to take this little blue boot off. Grab the return hose, line her up, seat it all the way. Now I'm going to definitely put the clamp on before I now I can release my hose clamp. Let's line it up. I have my 3 mounting bolts. Slide the top one in, and the other 2. Now I can get started by hand. That way I know I don't cross thread anything. 13mm socket. And I'm just going to bottom them all out. So the torque specs for the 3 mounting power steering bolts is 20 foot-pounds. I'm just going to double check. Perfect. Now let's put the power steering pressure line on. It goes up over the front here. Always start that by hand. That would not be one you would want to cross thread. That's a 16mm wrench. So I'm going to grab the power steering hose firmly, and I'm just going to give this a little snug. You don't have to really rank on it, so just like that. There's an O-ring in there, so it should be all set. Now we can fill the reservoir. On this model, you can use ATF, which is automatic transmission fluid, or power steering fluid. You don't want to fill it to the top, because once this runs, it will rise up with pressure. So you want to fill it to right about here. Just going to clean this. Now we're ready to put the belt on, start it up. So I just included a picture of the routing of the cert belt. So let's do it. We have the alternator down below, an idler pulley on the other side of that. So I'm going to guide it through. Now you have it over the alternator and the fan clutch pulley. Guide it down the harmonic balancer. Then over the water pump pulley. You gotta keep tension on it if you can at all times. Make sure it stays in the groove around the power steering pump. And then up over the tensioner. Slide it right over that tensioner. Perfect. Just double check before you start it up. Make sure it's in all the grooves, lined up with the grooves. It looks good. Now I can tighten my tensioner. Don't forget that when you tighten up this part of the pulley, it's going to give it a little bit more tension also. So I like to, rule of thumb, be able to turn the belt about 1/4 of a turn in all places, because you don't want to wear the bearings out. And then we can snug that up and we'll check it, see how it goes. 15mm wrench or socket. Because as you tighten this, it will snug that belt up a little bit more. What I like to do is just give this one tweak with that tight. And now I can check the belt. That's perfect. You're going to line these tabs on the bottom of the fan in with the slots of the radiator bracket. So just kind of guide it in there. And put your hand down there if you can. Make sure it's in the slots. There we go. Put your 2 bolts in. Snug those up. Now we get our fan electrical connector, run it up over, get our connector and put her in. Done. Let's connect the overflow hose. All set.